Hello and welcome to another TLDR US video. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at the Democratic and Republican primaries for New York City's mayor, and explain how Andrew Yang went from a 15-point lead over his Democratic rivals to coming in 4th, and why the results of this vote are so crucial. If you like our videos, then be sure to subscribe for more updates as we get closer to the official New York City mayoral race. So on Tuesday, Republicans and Democrats held their primaries for the New York City mayor. Now technically these primaries only decide the Democrat and Republican candidate, with the actual race taking place on November 2nd. But because New York leans so heavily Democrat, in practice whoever wins the Democratic primary becomes the mayor. Essentially, the Democratic primary is the de facto mayoral race. This year, the Democrats changed their electoral system from a plurality system to a runoff vote system. In the previous plurality system, voters only got one vote, and whoever got the most votes won, provided they got at least 40% backing. If they didn't reach the 40% threshold, then there'll be a runoff election between the top two candidates. Bill de Blasio, the current mayor, won the 2013 primary with just 41% of the total vote. This new system is different though, and lets voters rank up to 5 candidates. If a candidate has more than half of the vote based on first choices, then that candidate wins. If not, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and those voters' second preferences are redistributed. This process continues until either a candidate gets more than half the votes, or there are only 2 candidates left. So who are the candidates in this race? Well, there were 13 on the ballot, but it always looked like a 2-horse race between Andrew Yang, who you probably remember from the Democratic presidential primaries when he ran a grassroots campaign centered around universal basic income, and Eric Adams, an ex-police captain and state senator. The other candidates worth mentioning are Scott Stringer, a progressive candidate whose campaign was torpedoed by allegations of sexual harassment, Maya Wiley, another progressive who's backed by Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, and Catherine Garcia, the sanitation commissioner who experienced a late surge thanks to endorsements from the New York Times and New York Daily News. Garcia actually campaigned alongside Yang in the last few days of the race, after he said that he would hire her if he won, and urged voters to put her as their second choice. As you can see from this graph though, Yang was originally well ahead in the race, with a good 10-point lead in February, but this race has significantly tightened since then. This is probably down to 2 things. Firstly, as the election gets closer, the whole thing gets a bit more real, so voters may have decided that they want to pick a safer pair of hands with a bit more local government experience. Secondly, thanks to a recent uptick in violent crime, public safety has become a top priority for voters. And as a former police captain, Eric Adams is the go-to candidate for that. This does also seem to have hurt the more progressive candidates who endorsed some sort of defund the police program, which, whatever its possible merits, doesn't seem to have landed with voters who are particularly worried about violent crime. Thirdly, Yang has made some serious blunders in his campaign. He left the city for his home in Hudson Valley during the pandemic, admitted that he'd never actually voted in a mayoral election before, and suggested some truly weird policies, including somehow inviting TikTok hype houses to New York and building a casino on Governor's Island. That's not to say that Adams had a flawless campaign either. Despite being a police captain, the NYPD endorsed Yang over Adams, and an old video of Adams encouraging parents to spy on their kids has recently resurfaced.
You write the Constitution. There are no First Amendment rights inside your household. Maybe a simple jury box, but if you look through it closely, you don't know what your child may be hiding. For instance, a gun could be hidden, a small caliber weapon could be hidden inside a jury box. Look through it to see what exactly is your child carrying in addition to a book. Something simple as a crack pipe, a used crack pipe. Behind a picture frame you can find bullets. Could be just a baby doll, but also it could be a place where you can secrete or hide drugs. I will reach in, see what it is. This one could be hidden inside a pillow, a gun. Just look and see what's inside your bookcases. It could be more than just books. Perfect place to hide cocaine or other illegal substance inside the room.
Adams also said some slightly odd things towards the end of the race. In a Vanity Fair interview, he was asked what his favourite concert was, and he said Curtis Mayfield at the Wingate concert series. Two weird things about that answer. Firstly, it was the night where the lighting rig fell on Mayfield, paralysing him. And secondly, Mayfield hadn't even started performing when the rig fell on him. So when Adams said it was an amazing concert before that happened, it's unclear which bit was amazing. Also, in the debate, when he was asked one thing he couldn't live without, he said bubble baths. But it turned out that he doesn't actually have his own bath. When he was asked where he would retire, he said Golan Heights. Which, fair enough, is a very pretty place, but Israeli-occupied Syria is not a standard answer to the question, where do you plan on retiring to? Also, when he was asked what his favourite New York film was, Adam just replied Taxi. Anyway, enough memes. What were the results between Yang and Adams? Well, with 84% of first preference in-person votes counted, Adams was well in the lead, with 32% of the vote. Maya Wiley, the frontrunner, a progressive candidate, is in second with 22%. Catherine Garcia, the crisis controller, was in third with 30%, and Yang came in a miserable fourth with just 12% of the vote, and immediately admitted defeat. We probably won't know the full results until mid-July, because mail-in ballots, which account for 15 to 20% of the total vote, will only be counted from the 9th of July. And as no candidate has won an outright majority thus far, second and probably third round votes will also need to be counted. Nonetheless, it's very likely that Adams has won this race, for two reasons. Firstly, his support was very geographically widespread, which bodes well for his second preference votes. Secondly, progressive candidates, whose second preference votes are more likely to go to Wiley, in the general did worse than the centrist candidates, whose second preferences are more likely to go to Adams. So now we know he's most likely going to be mayor, what are Adams' policies? Well, Adams is probably the least progressive candidate when it comes to policing. Adams basically wants to maintain spending in the NYPD, and while he wants to make some savings by improving efficiency, he's strongly rejected the defund the police label, describing it as led by affluent white people. He also wants to reinstitute a controversial plainclothes anti-crime unit that was disbanded last year, and increase the use of solitary confinement in the city's jails. On drugs, Adams supports the legalization of marijuana, but not other hard drugs. On education, Adams supports having an all-year-round school year, facilitated by remote learning. Originally, he proposed online classes with 300 to 400 students, and then clarified he meant 30 to 40. The last policy we'll mention is his housing policy. Like many other big cities, housing in New York is astronomically expensive, with the average house coming in at about $750,000, and the average cost of living being about 2.5 times higher than the national average. Adams' housing policy is pretty vague, but basically seems to involve converting office and hotel space into residential properties, and increasing rent subsidies. So that's what the likely winner plans to do, and obviously we'll keep you updated with the results as they emerge, both from this primary and from the final election. Before that though, let us know what you think of these results and likely winner Eric Adams. Is he a good fit for the city, or have they made the wrong choice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that is in the description.